My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 34. At 2:47 a.m. on November 12th, 2023, I was standing in the NICU at Mercy General Hospital watching my 3-pound daughter fight for every breath through a ventilator, and my mother was on speakerphone telling me that she and Dad wouldn't be canceling their Hawaii trip because we've had this planned for 8 months, Sarah, and you're being unreasonable. Mom, she's dying. My voice cracked on the last word. The doctors said the next 48 hours are critical. I need you here. Your brother can come help you, she said. And I could hear my father in the background saying something about non-refundable deposits. Derek doesn't have a job right now anyway. He's available. I don't want Derek. I want my mother. I pressed my forehead against the glass separating me from my daughter's isolette. Please, I'm begging you. You're being dramatic, my mother said, her voice sharp now. Babies are resilient. She'll be fine. We'll visit when we get back next week. My father took the phone. Sarah, your mother and I have sacrificed enough for you over the years. This is our time. You're 33 years old. Handle it. The line went dead at 2:51 a.m. I have the call log still. 4 minutes and 6 seconds that changed everything. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. I need to know I'm not alone in this. My daughter survived. No thanks to them. She spent 19 days in that NICU, and I slept in a chair beside her isolette every single night. My husband, Marcus, was killed by a drunk driver 7 months earlier. His life insurance payout, $340,000, had just cleared 2 weeks before our daughter was born premature. I was alone. Truly alone. When my parents came back from Hawaii, tanned and relaxed, my mother brought me a pineapple-shaped keychain and told me I looked tired. You should really try to get more sleep, honey. It's not good for the baby to see you stressed. I told them to leave. My mother's face crumpled. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us? You chose a vacation over your granddaughter's life. We chose ourselves for once, my father said, his voice cold. Maybe you should learn to do the same instead of playing the victim. I didn't speak to them again. Not at Christmas, not on birthdays, not when they called crying in February asking why I was being so cruel. I blocked their numbers. I blocked Derek when he sent me a long text about how I was tearing the family apart over one mistake. Let me take you back 19 years to when I was 15 and my father came home early from his job as a senior insurance underwriter at Consolidated Life. He found me crying at the kitchen table over a failed math test. He sat down beside me, loosened his tie, and said, Sarah Bear, you know what I do all day? I calculate risk. I look at people's lives and decide what they're worth. But you're worth more than any policy I've ever written. He smelled like coffee and the sandalwood cologne he'd worn my entire life. He helped me study for the makeup exam. We stayed up until midnight, working through problems. He made me hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. When I passed the retest with an 89, he framed it and hung it in his office. That was the father I thought I knew. My parents died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday morning, April 15th, 2025. A semi-truck crossed the median on Interstate 84. They were killed instantly. Derek called me at 11:20 a.m. while I was processing a denied insurance claim at my desk at Apex Medical Billing Solutions. They're gone, he said. No greeting. Both of them. I sat there holding the phone, waiting to feel something. Grief. Relief. Anything. My hands didn't shake. My eyes stayed dry. My supervisor, Janet, asked if I was okay. I told her I needed to leave early. She hugged me and told me to take all the time I needed. I picked up my daughter from daycare and went home. We had mac and cheese for dinner. I gave her a bath. I read her 3 books. I tucked her in. Then I sat on my couch in the dark and replayed that phone call from the NICU over and over in my head. The funeral was on April 20th. I wore a black dress I'd bought at Target for $34.99. Derek wore our father's Rolex. Our mother's sister, Aunt Linda, kept pulling me aside to whisper that I should let it go now, and They loved you, they just didn't know how to show it. I didn't cry. Not during the service, not at the cemetery, not when Derek gave a eulogy about how our parents were devoted to family above all else, and how they'd sacrificed everything for their children's happiness. I wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to pull out my phone and play that voicemail my mother had left 3 days after the NICU call. The one where she said, "You're punishing us because we chose to live our lives instead of dropping everything for you like we always do. You've always been selfish, Sarah. This just proves it." But I sat still. I held my daughter on my lap. She was 18 months old and didn't understand why everyone was sad. She kept trying to give me Cheerios from her snack cup. 3 weeks after the funeral, Derek texted me asking to meet for coffee. "We need to discuss the estate," he wrote. "Saturday, 10 a.m., Starbucks on Laurelhurst Avenue. Don't be late." I should have known something was wrong. Derek had never been the "let's get coffee" type. He'd been unemployed for 2 years, living in our parents' basement, playing video games and borrowing money. But I was tired. I was grieving in my own way. And part of me, stupidly, hoped maybe this tragedy would bring us together. The Starbucks was crowded that Saturday morning. Every table full. Derek was already there when I arrived at 9:58 a.m., sitting at a corner table with a grande cup and a manila folder. He didn't stand when I walked up, didn't smile, just nodded at the chair across from him. "You're 2 minutes early," he said. "That's new for you." "What did you want to talk about?" I sat down, my purse in my lap. He opened the folder and pulled out a stapled document. "This is Mom and Dad's will, updated version, dated March 3rd, 2025, 6 weeks before they died." My stomach dropped. "Updated?" "You're not in it." He said it casually, like he was telling me the weather. "They left everything to me, the house, the investments, the life insurance policies, all of it." I stared at the paper he'd slid across the table. It was real, official. My name was nowhere on it. The total estate value, $1.65 million. Beneficiary, Derek Nathan Jenkins. "Why?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Because you cut them off," Derek said. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "They tried to fix things with you. They called, they sent cards. They showed up at your apartment and you wouldn't even open the door. They said you made unreasonable demands during a family crisis and held a grudge that destroyed their final years." A family crisis? I felt heat rising in my chest. My daughter was dying. She didn't die. She almost did. But she didn't. He shrugged. And Mom and Dad had already paid for that trip. They didn't owe you their entire lives just because you got pregnant by some guy who couldn't drive safely. The couple at the next table looked over. The barista paused mid-pour. I felt every pair of eyes in that Starbucks turn toward us. "Marcus was killed by a drunk driver," I said quietly. "He wasn't the one drinking." "Whatever." Derek pulled out another paper. "Look, I'm not here to argue about ancient history. I'm here to offer you a deal. Mom and Dad also took out a $500,000 life insurance policy 3 months ago. I'm the sole beneficiary on that too." 3 months ago? My mind raced. That would have been January, right after I got Marcus's life insurance payout. Derek's jaw tightened. Just for a second. Coincidence. They never mentioned a new policy. Why would they? You weren't speaking to them. He pushed a single sheet of paper across the table. "This is a waiver. Sign it, and you agree not to contest the will or the insurance policy. In exchange, I'll give you $50,000. That's more than generous considering you abandoned them." "I didn't abandon them." Sign this," Derek interrupted, "or I'll make sure everyone knows the full story. That you cut off your dying parents. That you refuse to let them see their granddaughter. That you're the reason they spent their final year heartbroken and alone. Mom kept a journal, Sarah, about how much you hurt them. I'll make sure every family member, every friend, every person at your job knows exactly what kind of daughter you were." The barista called out someone's name. "Venti caramel macchiato for Jessica." I looked down at the waiver, the blank signature line, the paragraph that started with, I, Sarah Marie Jenkins, hereby relinquish any claim. I need time to think about this. You have until Monday, Derek said. Sign it and move on, or I'll bury you in legal fees you can't afford. Your choice, Sarah Bear. He used my father's nickname for me. He'd never called me that before. He said it like a weapon. I stood up, leaving the waiver on the table. I'll let you know. Don't take too long, Derek called after me. The offer expires. I walked out of that Starbucks at 10:14 a.m. into the bright May morning and realized I had no idea what to do next. I started working at Mercy General Hospital's cafeteria 2 months after my daughter was born. I needed to be close to the NICU, needed to see her every break, needed to know if something went wrong I could be there in 90 seconds. I wore a hairnet and served scrambled eggs and coffee to exhausted doctors and crying families. I made $14.50 an hour. When my daughter was stable enough to come home, I enrolled in online medical billing and coding classes. I studied after she went to bed, certifications in terminology, and the endless maze of insurance codes. I passed my certification exam on the first try in August 2024. By October, I'd landed a job at Apex Medical Billing Solutions processing insurance claims and denials. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father had spent 32 years as an insurance underwriter. I was processing the very claims people like him had written. My supervisor, Janet, was the first person in 2 years who treated me like I was capable of something beyond survival. She was 56, divorced, with a son in the Navy. She brought me coffee every morning without asking. She covered for me when I had to leave early for daycare pickup. When I told her about my parents dying, she squeezed my hand and said, "Take whatever time you need, honey." I took 3 days. Then I came back because sitting at home made everything worse. On the Monday after my coffee meeting with Derek, the day my offer expired, I was at my desk processing a claim denial for a child's cardiac surgery when my phone buzzed. Derek, calling. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail. Clock's up, Sarah. I'm filing the probate paperwork tomorrow. Hope you made the right choice. Oh, and Mom's friends from church? They want to know why you won't return their calls. I told them you were always too good for them. They agreed. My hands were shaking as I played it back. Janet walked by, saw my face, and sat down in the empty chair next to my cubicle. What's wrong? I told her everything. The NICU call, the estrangement, the will, the Starbucks meeting, the waiver sitting unsigned on my kitchen counter. Janet listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My ex-husband tried to hide assets during our divorce. Thought I was too stupid to notice. But I noticed, and I documented everything. Do you have any proof of what your parents did? Any evidence that might contradict your brother's story?" I have the call logs from the NICU, the voicemails they left, the texts from Derek calling me cruel for cutting them off. Keep them, Janet said. Keep everything. Don't delete a single thing. That night, I pulled out every box I had from my parents' house, the few things I'd taken before I cut contact. Photo albums, old cards, a jewelry box that had belonged to my grandmother. At the bottom of one box, wrapped in tissue paper, I found a letter. It was addressed to me in my father's handwriting. The envelope was sealed. The postmark was dated March 28, 2025, 3 weeks before he died. My hands were shaking so badly I almost tore the envelope. Inside was a single page, folded 3 times. My father's precise, slanted handwriting filled the front and back. Sarah Bear, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Your mother, too, probably. We always said we'd go together. Can't imagine it any other way after 42 years. I'm writing this because I know what your brother is going to do. I've known Derek his whole life. He's lazy and entitled, and he's going to try to take everything. He doesn't know I know, but I found the drafts. The secret will he had your mother sign when she was on pain medication after her hip surgery. The life insurance policy application where he listed himself as the primary caregiver and called you estranged. He's been planning this since you cut us off. And you were right to cut us off. I've spent 2 years trying to figure out how to tell you that. How to apologize for choosing a vacation over my granddaughter's life. Your mother never saw it that way. She died thinking you were the cruel one, that you overreacted, that we were the victims. But I knew. That night in Hawaii, watching the sunset, all I could think about was you alone in that hospital. I knew we'd made the wrong choice. I was just too proud and too stubborn to admit it. The will Derek has is fraudulent. The real will, the one your mother and I signed together in 2019, is with our attorney, Philip Castellano. His office is on Morrison Street, Suite 402. The copy I'm enclosing is notarized and valid. It splits everything 50-50 between you and Derek, $825,000 each. The life insurance policy Derek found? That's real. I took it out to trap him. I knew he'd try to claim it. I knew he'd lie about you being estranged. I wrote detailed notes in the application about why I was getting the policy, health scare, wanted to secure family future, and attached a separate letter to the insurance company explaining that Derek was pressuring me to change beneficiaries and that any changes made after February 2025 were coerced. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive. I'm sorry I chose wrong when it mattered most. Your daughter, my granddaughter, I never met her. That's my greatest regret. There's more in my safe deposit box at Northwest Community Bank. Box 1847. The key is in the jewelry box I gave you last Christmas, the one you wouldn't open. It's taped inside the lid. Don't let Derek make you small. Don't let him rewrite history. I failed you when you needed me most. I won't fail you now. You were always worth more than any policy I ever wrote. I love you, Sarah Bear. I'm sorry I didn't show it when it counted. Dad. I read the letter 4 times. Then I cried for 20 minutes on my kitchen floor while my daughter slept. I cried for my father, who'd figured it out too late. I cried for myself, for the validation I'd needed for 2 years. I cried because even in death, my family was still a war zone. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 8 months. I drove to my parents' house where Derek was now living. I needed that jewelry box. He answered the door in sweatpants and a stained t-shirt at 9:30 a.m. What do you want? The jewelry box Grandma left me. It's mine. I want it back. It's in a box in the garage. Everything you didn't take is being donated to Goodwill next week. Good timing. He led me through the house I'd grown up in. My mother's furniture was still arranged the same way. My father's reading glasses were still on the side table. Derek had changed nothing except adding pizza boxes and beer cans to every surface. The garage was packed with boxes labeled in my mother's handwriting. Sarah's childhood, Sarah's books, Sarah's baby clothes. Things they'd saved, things they'd kept, despite everything. I found the jewelry box in the third box I opened. It was wooden with a delicate inlay of flowers on the lid. My grandmother had kept her anniversary ring in it. When I opened it, I saw the ring was still there, and taped to the inside of the lid, just like my father said, was a small silver key. You getting sentimental? Derek asked from the doorway. Just taking what's mine. I closed the box and tucked it under my arm. Take it all, Derek said. I don't need any of it. I got what matters. I didn't respond. I walked past him, got in my car, and drove straight to Northwest Community Bank. The safe deposit box was full. Legal documents, bank statements, a flash drive, a second letter from my father, shorter this time. Sarah, the flash drive has recordings. Mom and I had security cameras in the house after the break-in in 2022. They record audio. Derek doesn't know. The recordings from January through March are on here, including the conversations where he convinced your mother to sign paperwork while she was on medication, where he lied about you to the insurance company on speakerphone, where he laughed about playing the victim to get sympathy. Also included, my emails to Philip Castellano explaining the situation, bank statements showing Derek borrowed $47,000 from Mom over 2 years, never repaid, and the original 2019 will with both our signatures. You have everything you need. Fight for yourself. Fight for my granddaughter. I should have fought for you. Dad. I sat in the bank's private viewing room and listened to the recordings. My mother's confused voice asking Derek why she needed to sign another will. Derek telling her it was just updating beneficiaries and Sarah doesn't care about us anymore anyway, remember? My father's voice in the background saying, "Let me see that before she signs it." And Derek saying, "It's fine, Dad. I already had the lawyer look at it." Then a recording from February 3rd, 2025. Derek on the phone with someone at Consolidated Life Insurance. "Yeah, my sister is estranged from the family. She cut us off over a disagreement, made my parents' last years miserable. No, she's not a beneficiary on anything. My parents wanted everything to go to me since I'm the one who actually took care of them." All lies, but spoken with such conviction. I copied everything to my personal laptop. I made backup copies. I emailed them to myself. I printed the most damning pages. Then I called Philip Castellano. His receptionist said he'd been trying to reach me for weeks. He'd sent letters to my last known address, my parents' house, where Derek had clearly intercepted them. We scheduled a meeting for Thursday at 2 p.m. Philip Castellano was 71 years old with white hair and kind eyes that had probably seen 1,000 family dramas just like this. His office was exactly where my father said it would be, Morrison Street, Suite 402, with law books lining every wall and photos of grandchildren on his desk. "Your father came to see me 3 times in the months before he died," Philip said, pouring me coffee from a carafe without asking if I wanted any. "He knew Derek was planning something. He wanted to protect you. Why didn't he just talk to me?" "He tried. You'd blocked his calls." That landed like a punch. He was right. I had. Philip opened a thick file folder. "Here's what I have. The original 2019 will, signed by both your parents, witnessed and notarized. It divides the estate equally between you and Derek. Here's the deed to the house. It's in a trust that names both of you as beneficiaries. Here's documentation of the $500,000 life insurance policy, including your father's letter to the insurance company warning about potential coercion. And here's your father's sworn affidavit, dated March 20th, 2025, stating that any will or document signed after February 1st, 2025 was obtained under duress or fraudulent circumstances." I stared at the papers spread across his desk. This is enough to contest Derek's will? This is enough to prove Derek's will is invalid. Philip leaned forward. "But Sarah, contesting a will means going public. It means court. It means your brother will fight back. He'll say terrible things about you. He'll try to make you look like the villain. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the Starbucks meeting, about Derek using my father's nickname like a weapon, about 2 years of voicemails calling me selfish and cruel, about my daughter growing up thinking her mother wasn't worth fighting for. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared." "Good," Philip smiled. "Because your father left you one more thing." He pulled out a single envelope, unsealed. Inside was a check made out to Sarah Jenkins from Harold Jenkins's personal account. Dated March 27th, 2025, one day before the letter. The amount? $100,000. The memo line: "For my granddaughter's future, I should have been there. I'm sorry." I started crying before I could stop myself. Philip handed me a box of tissues and waited. When I could speak again, I said, "What do I do now?" "Now," Philip said, "we file a petition to invalidate the fraudulent will. We provide the evidence, and we let the probate court sort out the truth. I'm going to need you to make a list of every interaction you've had with Derek since your parents died. Every text, every call, every meeting. Can you do that?" I thought about the waiver sitting on my kitchen counter, the deadline Derek had given me, the threats he'd made. "I can do that." One more thing, Philip said as I stood to leave. The probate hearing is public. Your brother will be there. Your extended family will probably be there. It won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. He nodded. Your father said you were stronger than you looked. I'm starting to see what he meant. I left Philip's office with a folder full of documents and a plan. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could breathe. Derek called me that night at 11:47 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. I filed the probate paperwork today, his message said. The house is being listed next week. I'm starting to clear out mom and dad's stuff. If there's anything else you want, you better come get it before Saturday. Oh, and Aunt Linda wanted me to tell you that she's disappointed you couldn't put aside your grudge for the funeral. Everyone is. Just thought you should know. I saved the voicemail, added it to my evidence folder. The probate hearing was scheduled for June 18th, 2025 at 9 a.m. I took the day off work. Janet offered to come with me for support. I told her no. I needed to do this alone. The courthouse was cold and sterile with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Derek was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom with Aunt Linda and two of my mother's friends from church. They all looked at me when I walked up. None of them smiled. You're really doing this? Derek stood up. You're really going to drag our parents' memory through court because you're greedy? I'm here to tell the truth. The truth is that you abandoned them. His voice was getting louder. People in the hallway were starting to stare. The truth is that they died heartbroken because of you. The truth is that you don't deserve a single cent of their estate. The hearing starts in 10 minutes, I said quietly. Let's let the judge decide. We filed into the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, uncomfortable benches, a judge's bench that looked like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Judge Catherine Morrison was 63 years old, according to the nameplate on her desk. She looked tired. Philip Castellano was already there, organizing papers. He nodded at me. Derek's lawyer was a young man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The hearing started exactly at 9 a.m. Derek's lawyer went first, presenting the will from March 2025 that left everything to Derek. He talked about estrangement and broken relationships and how my parents had the right to leave their estate to whomever they chose. Then it was Philip's turn. He started with the 2019 will, presented it to the court, explained that it was properly executed, witnessed, and notarized, explained that it had never been officially revoked. Then he presented my father's letter from March 28th explaining the fraud. Then the affidavit from March 20th warning about coercion. Then the bank statements showing Derek had borrowed $47,000 from my mother and never repaid it. Then the audio recordings from the security cameras. The courtroom went absolutely silent as my father's voice played through the speakers. As Derek's voice talked about playing the victim and getting my mother to sign paperwork while medicated. As Derek lied to the insurance company about me being estranged. Derek's face went from red to white to gray. His lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Morrison held up her hand. I've heard enough. Mr. Jenkins, did you obtain your mother's signature on the March 2025 will while she was taking prescription pain medication? Derek's lawyer whispered something to him. Derek shook his head. She was clear-headed enough. The recordings suggest otherwise. Judge Morrison looked at Philip. Mr. Castellano, do you have the medical records from Mrs. Jenkins's hip surgery? I do, Your Honor. She was prescribed OxyContin, 15 milligrams every 4 hours for pain. The will was signed during the second week of her prescription period when the dosage was at its highest. Judge Morrison made a note. And Mr. Jenkins, can you explain the discrepancy between your statements to Consolidated Life Insurance and the evidence Mr. Castellano has presented showing that your sister maintained contact with your parents through at least November 2023? She cut them off after that, Derek said. She was cruel to them. She wouldn't let them see their granddaughter. I have call logs showing my parents contacted me 17 times in the 6 months before they died, I said. My voice surprised me. Calm, clear. I didn't answer because they never apologized for choosing a vacation over my daughter's life. But I never told them they couldn't see her. They chose not to visit. Is that accurate? Judge Morrison asked Derek. He didn't answer. She continued, Mr. Jenkins, did your parents ever attempt to visit their granddaughter after she was released from the NICU? I don't know. According to these call logs, your mother left 7 voicemails for Miss Jenkins between December 2023 and February 2025. None of them mentioned wanting to visit the child. Most of them accused Miss Jenkins of punishing them. Would you like me to play them? No, Derek said quietly. Judge Morrison sat back. Here's what I see. I see a daughter who set a boundary after her parents made a choice she couldn't forgive. I see parents who, rather than apologizing, blamed their daughter for the consequences of their own actions. I see a son who took advantage of his mother's post-surgical medication to obtain a fraudulent will. And I see a father who, at the end of his life, tried to make things right. She looked at Derek. Mr. Jenkins, you lied to an insurance company. You coerced your mother into signing legal documents while she was impaired. You attempted to defraud your sister out of her rightful inheritance. This court finds the March 2025 will to be invalid. The 2019 will stands. The estate will be divided equally between Sarah Jenkins and Derek Jenkins as originally intended. Derek stood up. This is bullshit. She abandoned them. Mr. Jenkins, Judge Morrison's voice was sharp, I suggest you sit down and be quiet before I hold you in contempt. Your sister had every right to protect herself and her child from people who hurt her, even if those people were her parents. Setting boundaries is not abandonment, it's survival. She signed something. The $500,000 life insurance policy will be investigated by Consolidated Life Insurance's fraud department. If they determine that your application contained material misrepresentations, which these recordings suggest it did, the policy will be voided. The $100,000 check written by Mr. Harold Jenkins to Miss Sarah Jenkins is valid and will be honored. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. I sat there, unable to move. Philip was shaking my hand, saying something about next steps and estate division and timeline. I couldn't hear him over the rushing in my ears. Derek stormed out of the courtroom. Aunt Linda followed him, but not before turning to look at me with something like disgust on her face. Or maybe it was shame. I couldn't tell. One of my mother's church friends, Margaret, stayed behind. She was 78 years old with carefully curled white hair. She walked over to me slowly. I didn't know, she said. About the Hawaii trip. About your baby. Elaine never told us that part. She just said you'd cut her off for no reason. I'm sorry we believed her. I nodded. Thank you. Your father called me a month before he died, Margaret continued. He asked me to pray for you and your daughter. He said he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and didn't know how to fix it. I didn't understand then. I do now. She squeezed my hand and left. I walked out of the courthouse into bright June sunshine. It was 11:34 a.m. The whole thing had taken 2.5 hours. My phone buzzed. Derek, you're dead to me. Don't ever contact me again. I blocked his number. Then I called Janet and told her the case was over. Did you win? She asked. I don't know if anyone won, I said. But I got what was mine. The estate division took 4 months to finalize. Derek fought every step, demanding appraisals and audits and delays. But in the end, the math was simple. $1.65 million divided by 2 equals $825,000 each. I received my portion on October 12, 2025. The same day, Consolidated Life Insurance voided the $500,000 policy Derek had tried to claim, citing material misrepresentation in the application. He got nothing from that policy. My father's trap had worked perfectly. I used part of my inheritance to pay off my student loans from the medical billing certification. I put $400,000 into a trust fund for my daughter's future. Education, wedding, first home, whatever she needs. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard big enough for a swing set. I kept working at Apex because I liked the structure, liked Janet, liked feeling useful. On Christmas Eve 2025, I took my daughter to visit my parents' graves. It was snowing lightly. She was 2.5 years old enough to walk, but young enough to still believe in magic. We brought flowers, white roses for my mother, yellow daisies for my father. These are your grandparents, I told her. They made mistakes, big ones, but your grandpa tried to make it right at the end. That counts for something. She touched the cold headstone. Pretty, she said. Yeah, baby. Pretty. I thought about my father's letters, about his recordings and his planning and his $100,000 check, about how he'd known Derek would try to steal everything and had built a defense I'd never asked for, about how his final act as my father was protecting me from my brother. It wasn't enough to erase the Hawaii trip. It wasn't enough to bring him back so I could tell him I understood. But it was something. If you're watching this and you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself, I want you to know something. Boundaries aren't cruelty. Walking away from people who hurt you isn't abandonment. And sometimes the people who wrong you don't get to decide if they're forgiven. You do. My parents chose a vacation over my daughter's life. My father spent his last months trying to atone. My brother tried to take what wasn't his. And me? I chose myself for once. I chose truth over silence. I chose fighting over folding. If you've ever had to set a boundary that made you the villain in someone else's story, type, I set the boundary in the comments. Or if you're still trying to find the courage to walk away from people who hurt you, type, I'm still learning. Both are valid. Both are brave. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'm sitting in my living room right now watching snow fall outside my window. My daughter is asleep upstairs. The house is warm. The bills are paid. There's a photo of my father on the mantel, the only one I kept. He's young in it, maybe 30, holding me when I was a baby. He's smiling. I don't know if he would be proud of me now, but I'm proud of me, and that's enough.